Welcome to the Building Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Dom Taujanskas, and join us as we explore the world of construction. Each episode, we welcome a guest that shares career highlights and career advice, and hopefully inspires the next generation of construction professionals. Welcome to another episode of the Building Your Career podcast. Today, I'm joined by Caroline Field, who I'm very excited to have on as a guest, and definitely approaching it from a different engineering perspective. Something that a lot of our listeners may not have heard of this certain topic before. So yeah, very much in keeping with the theme of the podcast to just get as much information out there as possible. So Caroline, I'll give the floor to you. If you could just give us a little bit of an understanding about your current job role and a little bit more about the company that you work for as well.
Sure, Dom. Really excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation. So I'm currently working at PA Consulting, which is kind of a management consultant, but with a bit of a twist because they have this really cool global innovation centre out of Cambridge. And so they can it's kind of like a structures lab, and they kind of do a lot of prototyping. They can kind of manufacture things. We're doing some work around sustainable products, and so it's quite an exciting engineering and scientific space. So I don't feel like I've left my people behind too much. So that's super exciting, and I lead national resilience, and so I joined on the back of the integrated review a few years ago, which kind of outlined the need for a national resilience strategy. And then we had the National Resilience Framework come out from the UK government just over a year ago. And so that really sort of sets the scene for how we're going to be resilient and how our critical national infrastructure should be resilient moving into the future.
Okay, perfect. And just for our listeners who might not understand the kind of resilience aspect, could you just kind of break down exactly what that means and talk about the kind of the government strategy as well?
Sure. Yeah. So I really think about resilience in its broadest sense. So essentially, we've all been through kind of COVID and experienced the last few years of lots of disruptions and change. And people talk about things like permacrisis, we're going from one thing to another, being very reactive. And so resilience is really that ability to be able to, plan for and manage disruption, but also to adapt to change and ultimately to thrive in that challenging environment. And so it's kind of setting that skills, which really, or the baseline for being able to kind of mitigate the risks that we do know about, but being able to adapt and deal with uncertainty, change and challenge. And so that you can think about at any level of a system. Obviously in an engineering context, my background is more about protecting infrastructure from extreme loads, which is how I got into resilience. But actually the resilience of something like the UK, for example, is based on thinking about all the systems. So kind of how people interact with infrastructure, and virtual systems. And so it's very much sort of a complex system problem, which I find as an engineer quite exciting to kind of think about, and bringing together some of those social aspects into the sort of engineering and technical aspects, which really has kept my interest over the years. In terms of the National Resilience Framework, it's a really excellent move actually from, I think, what COVID showed us is the fact that we've become quite a reactive culture, and we don't necessarily plan or invest in dealing with kind of these events up front enough. And so the framework really talks about three kind of core aspects, which is one is prevention rather than cure. So kind of moving from that reactive posture to very much preventative, which is great, and investing in resilience. The second one is around what they call a whole of society approach. So thinking about kind of joining the dots from, academia through to practitioners, through to society, through to government, so that we're all kind of working towards and owning resilience and playing our part. And so that's quite a shift in mindset. So there's a really interesting piece around sort of behaviour change, sort of going from that reactive sort of responding to an emergency to actually building societal resilience, which is actually quite different. So that's super interesting. That's sort of happening at the moment. And so I'm very, very involved with that.
Sounds awesome, and definitely what we're trying to do in this podcast is explore all the different options and varieties available in the entirety of the construction industry. So it sounds absolutely incredible. But I think, obviously you mentioned that you were a visiting professor as well at Loughborough University. So could you tell us a little bit more about, kind of your involvement there as well?
Oh yeah, that was been really, really fun actually. So I received the Royal Academy of Engineers kind of honorarium a couple of, no, probably 4 years ago actually, which was a 3-year kind of visiting professorship at Loughborough. And so I'm a professor in structural and infrastructural resilience. So I work in the civil engineering department. And so I go up and give lectures about resilience, various aspects of resilience. So introduction to resilience, and then how you incorporate resilience into design. And I've done a lot of sort of performance-based engineering, so kind of that simulation of extreme loads on structures. So I kind of share some of that. And then I'm also on their industry advisory board. So I kind of look at kind of the curriculum and say, oh, you should put a bit of resilience in there, or systems thing, or I'll sort of, provide some views on that and what we're kind of looking for from an industry perspective. And then probably the funnest part though is going up and being part of the kind of projects that they're presenting. So I get to kind of come in and they get to present them to me, and I get to kind of say, oh, what about this? And it's just so amazing to see the amazing work they're doing. I was up there a few weeks ago, and it was just incredible. Really, really enjoy that. So yeah, really, really enjoying that role, and hopefully that will continue. They've extended my professorship. So yeah, so that's really good.
Awesome. And I remember that like it was yesterday, my first year of studying architecture at Leeds University, and having to present those models, having to present your work, and that like my nerves now for any type of public speaking, that really got rid of my nerves when I was 18 years old. Yeah. So it's such an important part of the process.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I mean, I think often those types of skills we kind of don't think about in the context of engineering, but it's so important being able to kind of, particularly when you sort of move more into the consulting aspect, you really need to be able to talk to clients and be able to make it simple for them and talk about technical things in quite a simple way and get your ideas across. And, I was really impressed by the young people up at Loughborough. I was kind of like, you guys, they were very, came across very confidently, and I was like, wow, these are the engineers of the future. None of these sort of shy people hiding in the corner doing the sums. It's now, you got to do all that as well, but need to be able to talk about it. And so I think that's, certainly a skill set that I look for with people that I'm working with and hiring.
Definitely, and you hit a huge career milestone last week as well. So, can you tell us, our listeners, the good news?
Yes, yeah. I became a fellow of the Institution of Civil Engineers, which is their kind of highest level, which is in recognition of kind of what I've given to the industry over the last 30 years. I know I don't look that old, do I? It's kind of been. I sort of started putting the paperwork together, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and you sort of get busy and you're like, oh. And then Miranda Houston, who's in ICE Southwest, she's been nudging me, so I appreciate that, a bit of nudging, and I got my paperwork in over Christmas, and found out last week, which was fantastic. And I was sort of almost more happy than I thought I'd be. I was quite chuffed, actually. I suppose, being in engineering for that long, it really does feel like, recognition and being one of very few females that have got to that status. It's quite an achievement. Really, really chuffed about it.
Awesome. And I suppose if we just kind of turn back the hands of time slightly now, then, what kind of inspired you to pursue a career in kind of engineering when you first started out in the field?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I didn't even know what engineers did. I don't think, when you were sort of a teenager, it wasn't the sort of thing that somebody told me I could do, for example. But I'd always been really good at maths and I really enjoyed maths, and I also really enjoyed design and art. And so I was thinking, what combines those things? And I was really interested in buildings. I was always sort of, sketching kind of layouts. And so I was thinking about architecture. And I did a work placement at a local architect's when I was probably about 17. And so I was sort of saying, well, how do you make this stand up? And he said, that's the structural engineer. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't even know about structural engineers. And then when I was kind of looking to choose sort of universities, I sort of went through different, I looked, should I do maths? What should I do? Aeronautical engineering, astrophysics. I was looking at all these different types of courses. And my A-level teacher, A-level maths teacher, said, you should do civil engineering. I was like, okay. So that's
good.
how I got into doing civil structural engineering at Bath University. And I was really looking for that. It was one of the few courses at the time that really combined engineering with the architecture and the mechanical engineering, so that you actually worked as a unit. And I loved that, and I thought that was really what was really strong about the course, is that we all did a bit of, I did architecture for the first year, and we did a bit of mechanical engineering, designing, heat pumps and whatever, heating systems. So I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really good, and I did a placement at Bureau Happold.
And then in terms of kind of career as well, you said you did a little bit of. Okay, brilliant. Sorry, I was just saying in terms of the career after university as well. You mentioned that you did a little bit of work in the United States. So can you tell our listeners, kind of what you were involved in there?
Yeah, sure. So I'd always been interested in, earthquakes and volcanoes. I think that was a sort of geology kind of, or geophysical kind of interest. And I know for my undergraduate degree, I did a project around earthquake engineering. And so I'd always been quite keen to sort of do a master's, but I thought, what I'll do, I'll go and get a few years experience in sort of regular structural engineering, and then I'll go back and do my master's. So I did that in 98, 99. I went to Imperial and did a master's in earthquake engineering and structural dynamics, which I absolutely really enjoyed. And after that, I came back to Bureau Happold and got chartered. So 2000, I got chartered. So it's been a long time between getting chartered and getting fellowship. Then I thought, I need to be where the action is. I've done earthquake engineering. We're not doing too much of that in the UK. So I ended up joining Arup, and they seconded me to their San Francisco office for 2 years, and I stayed for 12. And so I got to do, it was so cool. It's such a cool place to be. And I got to work on some really amazing projects, the California Academy of Sciences in Golden Gate Park. And then I left there and joined a small woman-owned engineering firm in 2007 called Hinman Consulting Engineers. And Eve Hinman specialised in blast engineering and designing structures for blast loading. And so I thought, this is super, it's very much not in the code. I've always done sort of, first principles engineering and performance-based design and high-end analysis. I was worked in the group at Arup that did the high-end sort of analysis and finite element analysis and simulation. And so I was simulating earthquakes on built, it's very, very fun. And so then I went to work with Eve, where I kind of really learned about how you run a small business, like 25 of us, and got more involved with that side of it, but also the very sort of technical side of blast engineering. And I really enjoyed my time there. And I think that really gave me a lot of confidence as a female engineer, and really kind of let me out of my box. I would say just really, it was where I think I had that sort of very much really found myself as a kind of leader, and it was a fantastic experience, and I definitely appreciative of my time there. And then I came back here and worked in a few different places, trying to find where I fit now, given that I've sort of moved from, I came back to the UK, and then I just sort of had this idea about resilience and thinking about, I'm sure resilience consulting could be a thing, because I think clients need to be thinking about it, and this was sort of over 10 years ago, so I was ahead of the curve, and so I got quite interested in urban resilience. We had the 100 Resilient Cities program that Rockefeller sponsored back in, I think it's like 2013, and so that fascinated me. I was like, well, that's interesting. And so I started growing a team, a resilience team, as well as a blast team when I was at Bureau Happold. And so we developed a really innovative approach around measuring resilience for cities, which was really fun. And so I just got interested in, so measurement of resilience has always been an interesting thing for me, and something that not many people had sort of, no one had really figured out at the time. And then I sort of got interested in different types of systems and systems thinking. So I'd looked at sort of resilience of cities, obviously resilience of buildings, infrastructure, and then I ended up looking at resilience of organisations because that was the next challenge. That was interesting. Same principles but different challenge. And now more recently, I'm doing resilience of people. I'm now accredited in resilient leadership, which is, so the whole system, I kind of understand, how to be resilient at different levels and how that sort of connects, which I just find that fascinating. So it's been really interesting, and I would definitely encourage people to kind of almost, learn outside of their area, because I think that really enriches kind of you as a person. So being able to bring those sort of leadership parts into the kind of technical I think it's really quite powerful.
I think that's an amazing bit of advice there. And, it sounds like you've had an incredible journey where you've learned lots of different aspects along the way, and then it's all kind of come together at the end, really. But out of interest, obviously knowing everything that you know now, if you could turn back the hands of time and give yourself one bit of advice when you first started out then, what would be the kind of the main advice that you would give to your younger self then?
I find that's a really difficult question to answer, actually. I almost wish I'd asked more questions when I was younger. I think being one of very few females in engineering at the time, there's sort of nobody above me particularly. I had quite a few people alongside me at the time. This was like early 90s. You almost felt like you couldn't show any weakness or show that you didn't know something, and I always felt like I needed to be better than everyone else and just prove how good I am. And so I think I think now, I ask questions all the time, which is probably quite annoying for a lot of people. But I think that's, be inquisitive, be curious, or don't be afraid to ask questions. And I think that's I think that would have been quite helpful.
Definitely, and it's a really solid bit of advice. No, that's great.
Because question, I'm like, really, because the context, it's like 30 years ago, so the context is different now, I think, than back then, and so it's quite an interesting question, difficult question to answer.
Yeah, to be honest, that's quite a common one, is just to ask questions, at that younger stage as well, really. But I suppose that leads really nicely on to our next question as well. For either people going into university or even going through the university process, in your opinion, what are the kind of the key characteristics that make up a kind of successful engineer in today's market, where maybe there's certain skill sets that people can work on while they're at university that would hold them in really good stead for when it does come to getting into the working environment? So what do you tend to find are the best characteristics in today's market?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no longer enough to just be technically good at engineering. I mean, that's sort of almost a given. I think what I tend to look for is I like systems thinkers. I like people who can zoom in and zoom out, so kind of and be able to join dots up, and that's really important because of resilience, because that you need that in terms of being resilient. But also, I think we touched on it earlier, that communication piece, and so I really enjoy that aspect. That's probably one of my favourite parts of the job, is sort of joining up and being to articulate sort of from research through to practice through to policy. And so that's the space I'm in now. So I will translate technical things to somebody in government that's dealing with policy. And so being able to do that, I think, is quite a skill. And I think that kind of puts you in a very, very good position.
Brilliant. And I suppose for anyone who is starting out their journey, who wants to kind of explore what it's all about in terms of engineering, is there any places, either online or any meetups or any kind of particular websites or organizations that people can reach out to just to get a little bit of an in to the industry? Where would you recommend people go for latest news and information?
Well, I listen to tons of podcasts, but I tend to do most of my socializing on LinkedIn. So there's loads of kind of events and podcasty type things, or whatever you want to call them, on LinkedIn, which I think are really useful. And I personally tend to communicate, if I've done an article or something, I'll put it on LinkedIn. But recently, actually, we co-founded the Centre for Whole Society Resilience. So I will recommend you go to that website, which is actually hosted by the University of Gloucester. So it's just a collaborative
Put the link below here as that for that as
brilliant.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that was quite something that I was quite excited about.
Yeah, I mentioned sort of the whole society resilience piece that the government's looking to achieve, and I thought, well, there's no real collaboration space to do that, and so I'd been talking to colleagues. A really good friend of mine called Ruth Crick, who's a professor of learning. She's amazing. And then she introduced me to Adila Shafi at University of Gloucester. And so we kind of said, well, let's just do it. Let's put this together. So let's provide a collaboration space for people to work on resilience, but whether it's a practitioner, university, or government, or whoever, that can just come in and we can kind of provide some thought leadership. We can work on potential projects together. So we've sort of been looking at some research projects where we can work with the universities and with industry. So with our contacts from PA, with sort of our clients, it's kind of okay, we can get a client, we can get us as practitioners, and we can get universities together to solve some of these big problems. So I think it's just a space that we can kind of do that, and anybody's welcome to join the team, to join the group. But go to the website. There's a form you can fill out. So yeah. Well, it's very, very exciting.
Awesome.
We just thought we'd get on and do it, as kind of that's that you might be able to tell that about me. I'm just sort of like, well, let's just get on and do that, shall we? And I think
Definitely.
that's the sort of positive aspect of being an engineer. You tend to want to get stuff done.
And we'll provide the link below, but please do click on the website, take a look at that, take a look at what that's all about. I can't strongly advise enough to click the link below. But for you then, for anyone kind of weighing up their options, maybe at A level at the moment and looking to go into university, what would you say are the kind of most relevant courses, or what are the different options available to people who are maybe just moving out of the college route and looking at university options now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are so many more courses now than there used to be, but obviously you want to look for a good accredited course. I mean, I can recommend Loughborough, being a professor. They've got an amazing campus, and so you can get us amazing facilities as well. And if you want to do engineering, there are some really, that's a really good course. University of Bath I went to, they got a great course. Bristol's got a great course, and obviously the usual suspects, Imperial and Cambridge, Oxford. So I think there's just a lot out there. I'm also seeing a lot more kind of in the apprenticeship side. Definitely that is. So not necessarily the university route. So I think particularly employers are kind of looking at that. And then I think if you do university, then tending to do a master's is good. So I think there's lots of options, and I'm even seeing some courses now in resilience, so more around sort of disaster risk management. And so I think we'll see more in the area of resilience as well, because the government is setting up a resilience academy as part of the national resilience framework, which will be hopefully be really interesting and help set up a career path for resilience professionals, which doesn't really exist at the moment. So I think that would be quite exciting. So that's coming up. The other thing I need to mention as well, I should mention, is you were asking about courses and things. I do a course for the Institution of Structural Engineers, which is in September, which is on, I'll call it resilience-based design. I think it's called resilience, robustness, and reliability. And so I go through, the basics of resilience, how I incorporate resilience into design, and then one of my colleagues from Loughborough does all the hard sum engineering parts, does all the equations, which is helpful. And so we do like a tag team, which is fun. So yeah, that's been quite good to do that. So that's in September, if anybody's interested.
Awesome. Definitely. And if there's any links as well, we'll include them below too. But just leading on quite nicely to the final question then. So with a little bit of a lack of awareness of what the construction industry is, there's a lot of common misconceptions out there. What can the industry do as a whole to kind of attract and retain and also nurture that young talent into the industry there?
Yeah, well, I think this is where we need these sort of role models. So like I am now, I mean, you need people to get out there and tell people, what it's about. And I, for years I've been back to Bath and just sort of told the prospective kind of students, this is, it's quite embarrassing. You feel sort of like this is your life. You stood up there telling people, this is my career. This could be you. But actually, I think it is really helpful to be able to provide more I would say modern role models of kind of what it actually is about and where it can take you. Because I think engineering skill sets, what you learn in engineering degrees, is very transferable to other areas. And I think particularly it sort of breeds that, the complex problem solving skills. And I think that's really stood me in good stead. So systems thinking, complex problem solving, and collaborative working, those are all key, what my friend Ruth would call meta competencies for learning, which are really, really useful in other industries. So I think if you're very sort of practically minded, enjoy maths, enjoy design and a challenge and kind of solving problems, I think engineering is a great profession to go into. And I think that skill set is really useful and transferable. I mean, I'm proof of that. I now work for a management consulting firm. But I think that skill set is really helpful in terms of framing my thinking. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, Caroline, it's been an absolute honour to have you on. I think it's our first fellow, actually, to be on the podcast. So, yeah. So, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's been a real eye-opener. Your journey sounded absolutely awesome as well. And it just shows of all the different aspects of the industry, different aspects of engineering. So, get on and do your research and, reach out to organizations as well, and you'll find out there's a lot more to it than what you originally think.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. There's lots of different sort of consulting directions. I mean, when I was working back in Arup or in Bureau Happold, there's lots of different disciplines. Designing lighting, designing, going off in different directions. Urban planning. And you can move around and across and learn different kind of skills and capabilities, which is really fun. So I definitely recommend it. And I'm delighted to have been able to chat with you today. And it's been a real pleasure. And if anybody, feel free to link in with me. And if you've got any questions, very happy to kind of, help out in any way.
Perfect. Well, Caroline, thank you so much for being a guest.
You're very welcome. Good to see you. Have a great weekend.
Take care.
Joining us on the Building Your Career podcast. We hope you enjoyed hearing from our guest and learning about the different career paths available. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe so we can reach even more listeners. And if anyone wants any free CV advice or simply wants to know the options available to them, don't hesitate to get in touch.